and then I was asking questions to senior staff, and they were just like, well, that, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't, you can't do that. It doesn't fit the mold, because, again, we remember science has to fit certain criteria. It doesn't fit criteria, and it becomes an outlier. And actually, all human beings are outliers. No one fits the criteria. And I was like, well, I know they're outliers, because I've studied outliers for the last 20 years.
I'd like to introduce Stephen Braybrook, and I'd say Stephen and I, we go back quite a long way now, and we've developed a really fond friendship, and I love Stephen to bits in the way that he thinks, and we met each other on social media in a way. Our names kept on popping up, and I think it was probably around something to do around tensegrity that probably started that whole thing off, because I wasn't necessarily agreeing with what that subject is or the way it was being described, and the moment I saw Stephen say certain things, all of a sudden it was it was just matching my way of thinking with this. And I'm going to let Stephen introduce himself, because it's be really great to kind of get to know how Stephen Braybrook got to the place that Stephen Braybrook is right now. And a lot of you might know also Stephen has written this book, The Evolution of Biomechanics, and it is a game changer. I mean, Stephen's always been a game changer. There's something that happens with you, which I always find quite remarkable. And I've just been looking back over some old footage when you've been in my courses. And when you start things off, when you get the course going, a lot of us are sitting there thinking, where's he going with this right now? I can't quite see the relevance. And then all of a sudden, you just say something and everyone goes, wait, what? And the world shifts in that moment. And I watch it, and everyone's eyes are fixed on you from that moment, because you've pulled the rug out from under their feet in a very simple throwaway sentence, and then they're hooked in that moment. And sometimes they're hooked in a way that they don't like, and sometimes they're hooked in the way that they're completely enthralled. And from that moment onwards, you've got them in the palm of your hand, because you're literally shifting their vision. And the most amazing thing I see with Stephen's work, and I've got a feeling it's changing now as well from the conversations we've had and what I've seen you've been doing. But there's a deep kind of, in my mind, you might need to correct me, this sort of, what words just come to mind actually, like a neurological tensegrity. I don't know, that might be completely wrong, but something about how the neurology of ourself shifts our perspective. And the moment you start talking, you talk to that part of people's brains. There's something in the way you deliver it. You go straight there. So they're already in that place before they even know they're there. So they're kind of triggered and they're charged, but in a way that is actually going to take them into something that's really quite useful. And, there is always, I've seen in my sessions with you, some kind of meltdown with someone. Not so much that it's uncontrollable, but it's like it's shifted their world so much that they have to really sit back and take stock. And it happens in that moment. They've been hit, like sideswiped in an instant. And it's remarkable. It's absolutely remarkable. And it's like, the movement, man, it's more than just the moving body. It's so much more than that. But anyway, Stephen Braybrook.
Wow. Thanks for the introduction, mate. I tend not to get. I think this is going to be quite an honest and candid one. So I think people that have experienced me on your courses and elsewhere have sort of understood a little bit about what I do. But I'm going to be as honest as I can. But I think one of the things that people don't know really about me, and it's something that it's taken me probably. So I'm 46 now, so it's probably taken me a good, I don't know, up until I was 40 to even sort of talk about it. And my upbringing was amazing. I've still got the best. My mum and dad are still alive now. I'll be seeing them sometime this week, hopefully. But they're the best parents in the world. But I grew up with, I had both my eardrums had a film over it until I was 2, so I couldn't hear until I was 2. So both my eardrums drilled, and I had probably about 6 years of speech therapy, because I had and I still have quite a bad stutter. And during that time of speech therapy, I was my elocution of words was unbelievable. Obviously, but I couldn't maintain that. So obviously, you hear what you hear now. So not only was I born deaf, and I still have hearing aids, but I don't wear them so much. So I can hear, but I can't hear pitches, and I can't hear tones, and I can't hear anything like that. It's just, I couldn't tell you a male or female voice if the octaves are close together, things like that. So I went up until I was like 12, 13, where my brother, who's 3 years younger, used to follow me around and tap me on the shoulder. So if people were talking behind me, he had to tap on the shoulder for me to turn around to acknowledge they're there.
Oh.
So I went through years of people saying I was dismissive, disrespectful, arrogant, unsociable, you name it, I probably had that time, and what people don't realise that for probably up until 13, 14, I couldn't hear people talk if they were behind me. So if they were in front of me, it was okay because I could lip read, and I still lip read now. Okay, but it's not to a point where I'm purposely thinking about lip reading. I can lip read and I can hear, and those two are merged together. However, sometimes what is being said and what I think I'm hearing are two different things. So for the first 13 years, people were just, I was unsociable. I was unsociable because I couldn't hear. So not only did I have hearing problems and a stutter, I am extremely dyslexic, which I didn't find out until I was in my university, in my 30s. So I couldn't spell. I remember, I couldn't really spell simple words that my 8-year-old now spells words that I can't still spell. Okay, and he is probably below mid-set in school. Okay, and I'm a university lecturer, 3 degrees, going to do a PhD or doctorate. I am doing doctorate, right? His handwriting is better than mine, and he has bottom 10% handwriting, or bottom 10% percentile of handwriting in his class, and his handwriting is better than mine. Okay, so I didn't really learn to read or write until I was about 10 or 12. Okay, so my school was just, it was what it was. When I went to school, we had 5 years. First 3 years, third year you did your mock, 5th year, 4th and 5th you got put into sets. I played sport at professional football at high level. Well, at that stage, at high level. So everything I'd done was football. So when I got to 13 or 12 or so, we did our mock exams. I didn't get any grades. They put me in the lowest sets possible. And that lowest set was just a bunch of kids who were running around the school roofs, playing football inside classrooms, and the teachers just leaving us for an hour and get on with it. So I left school with no GCSEs at all. I don't even think I put my name down on one bit of paper. So going through all that, it's not a sob story, but what it did do to me, it made me not listen to anybody else apart from myself. And the only judgment I ever made wasn't on other people's opinions. It was on how I incorporate those opinions into my own thinking. So I never took anything. I don't take anything as gospel. I don't say one thing as gospel. I don't say, oh, so-and-so said that, and that must be right. I don't know what it is. So what that did back then, it allowed me to take information. Now, I wasn't even putting pen to paper in school, and I think in the last 2 years, someone said to me the other day, how much time did you spend at school? And I think I spent about 15% of the time at school, because I was playing football. But everything I did was football. So I developed an OCD personality on football. So I had everything. I was for Ipswich Town. I had everything: pillowcases, wallpaper, curtains, flooring, you name it. I think everything I had. I used to name, back in the 80s when I was 74 kids, so like late 70s, mid 80s, I can name every single ground in the country, where they were, what their road was, who their manager was, what their starting 11 was. I can remember that all day long, because I used to, if I like something, I read it and 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 I go cover to cover and I go again and I go again and I go again and I go again and I go again. And by doing that, it allowed me to find stuff that I really, really liked, to study the stuff that I really, really liked, and not care about what other people think about what I'm studying. I'm not really caring if I got it wrong or right as such. Just take a notice of it. If it wasn't correct, I'll then go back. And I used to do that at 2 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. I used to walk out of a classroom and do that. You name it. And I still do that. I still get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and write things down. I still, if a book's missing on my bookshelf, which it's a bit messy at the moment, but I know exactly where every single book is. If a book's missing, or I go to bed, and my eye just scans the bookshelf and it's not there, I'm sitting up until 4 o'clock in the morning to find it. If I've got something in my head, and I go, I can't remember what that was. I don't know where it's come from, but I can't remember. I will go into my library and go and find that book and sit there and read it and read it and read it and read it. And whether that's 6 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the morning makes no difference.
That's the same.
Yes. I do it over lunch. You know, if we're having dinner, I'll go and if we're at a restaurant, I'll go to the toilet and get my phone and do it. It makes no difference. I will constantly do it. But what that did during during that childhood, it allowed me to have an OCD, disputation of if I like something, I will read it and I will read it only that. So I've never read a romantic novel or a book that is not scientifically based somewhere or has something about what I'm doing. I have no interest, or I don't understand history or politics or banking systems or anything like that. I've got no interest, but I don't understand anything. I'm the worst person in quizzes, in pub quizzes. I'm decent on music. I'm decent on 80s music. I'm okay with that because I've got an OCD memory, see? I can remember words. So if people say something to me, I remember it's there. And then when someone says to me, what did they say? I can regurgitate near enough what that person said. It doesn't come into my psyche until someone says. So we got a cousin's quiz thing that we do every week. Music comes on, name the following lyrics, 1980s, bang, I've got it. I'm not thinking about that every day of the week, but once it's in there, it's there for life. But what it allowed me to do is to find my own way of learning, not being disrupted in that way, and never ever taking other people's words, no matter who they were, as the truth. And always, if I want to know something, I always go back to the original origins of where it came from and ask the questions. So for me, people look at me and go, oh, he's very aggressive in what he does, or he's, we use the word honest, I think, but people say, he's a bully and he upsets people, or he says it how it is, and, and he's too raw, whatever. I see it as I'm saying what I know is the truth to me. It's not a fiction. It's not a story that someone else has said that I'm regurgitating. I'm not speaking someone else's words. I'm not trying to please other people in saying those words. Everything I say is purely how I am, how I feel, and what information I've got. And if people like it, then great. If people don't and get disrupted from it, then again, to me, it may come across as lack of empathy, but it's not. It's just a lack of reality. So I am a person that will never say, that sheep is black if it's plainly white, just to be liked and just to be fit into an environment. I will never do that. And if starts at it, inspiralize it in a sermon, I'll always my animal go, well, where'd it come from? How, when, what, if, but, well, how? I'm asking these questions because if you can answer them back, then that's great, because you're speaking the language or the words that you want to speak due to your own cycle of knowledge. But if you're regurgitating back that I've read 20 years ago, because trust me, I've got 5,500, 6,000 books. So probably somewhere you're speaking about biomechanics or you're speaking about psychology. I've probably read it somewhere, And if you're saying something and I know you're regurgitating some information, that's the biggest BS of all. And it's not a BS because you're telling somebody else is somebody else is saying, oh, you're amazing because you're saying this and you're saying that and you must know your stuff. It's a BS because you're peddling this stuff. You're pushing it out there and you're saying it's yours. No, nothing's ours. I've just read, people say to me, oh, you're quite smart. And I go, no, I just read different books. I've just spent the time reading different books. I just spend the time immerse myself in a subject which I find probably easy to understand. That doesn't make me smart. It just makes me a little bit, a bit OCD and crazy in there. Anyone can do that. But it's then when you start to regurgitate and say, well, this is my information and this is theirs and this is that and this is, it's like, that's the fallacy. So I've always gone down the route of, because I've had to work quite hard in understanding stuff. My speech is not always the greatest. I can't pronounce certain words. If you see me outside of, if I've been on your courses and, not being egotistical, but I can hold a room of 10,000 people. It's not a problem. But if I saw one of those people outside, I've had a good conversation with, I'll cross the road, not speak to them. Because it's not that I I don't like that. I don't like the people. It's just that, you stick me in front of an environment which I've spent my whole life trying to understand, but not understand, but get myself an identity from, a pure identity, then I'm happy. If I'm in an environment which, my identity is now being questioned by myself and other people, then I'm going to walk away from that situation. So I love people arguing on courses. And it's not because I love an argument back. It's because, I feel, it's like that's my world. My whole identity is built in that moment. My whole education, self-education has been built in that moment. My whole hardship and crying for hours and hours and hours at home, and being ridiculed and being beaten up, and that whole sort of the whole environment that you do when you're a social leper. That's my moment. That's my moment. So there's no way that I'm going to ever. I love those moments because my true identity comes out. And like you said before, I had this way of sort of getting to the point. I don't know. It's just me speaking passionately like I am now, and at the end of it, saying I will never change a word in that, because at that moment it was what everything that I've gone through my whole life comes out in that moment. And when it comes out in that moment, that's just pure passion and desire. Whether I'm right or whether I'm wrong, I will go home and go, I spoke the truth according to Stephen Braybrook.
Yeah. So there's something that happens that I do see that happens in the courses, because there was specifically one weekend that you were with us, and almost all hell broke out for a while. Remember that? And there was a bit of a debate and an argument going on. Excuse me. And it's so obvious to see that the individual that's arguing that point has all of a sudden their defense mechanism came up so strongly that they became so blinkered, which was almost a fight or flight response with them, that what was happening was glaringly obvious in front of the room. And you're standing there with that object almost in front of them, and they were almost blind to it in that moment. And somehow you have a way to have them see that. I don't know, it's you put it so plainly in front of them, and this is the thing, it's incredible to watch it happen. It might not be an easy ride. It's never an easy ride. But anyway, Stephen, how did you get from your footballing life to what you started to get into with the moving body, and what had you question what we consider to be, the sort of mechanical understanding of anatomy and movement, which I personally think that anatomy is such a small percentage of the movement world that it's almost negligible. We need to know something there, because at least we can speak the language, but it's just the language, but it doesn't relate to movement itself. What was the thing? What happened with you?
Yeah, I at the age of 16, my knee basically exploded in a tackle. I was playing in a professional youth team set up. I have no idea what would have happened after that. Some say, I could have gone on, or there was a contract at the end of it. Sort of anyway. So 16, my knee blew out. So obviously, not only have I gone through my whole childhood up until 16, only have an identity in football as a person, who immersed himself with loving it and also playing at high standard. At 16, 17-ish, just before that was it. One tackle, never kicked to football again. I still come straight in my right knee. I can't get my heel to my bum. I've probably got about 60% movement in it. I've only got one ligament holding it together. One ligament that holds, both posterior cruciate ligaments. The only one I've got. No, posterior cruciate is no longer there. The anterior is on the thread. Both medial and lateral collateral ligaments have been stitched back, and both cartilages are missing. So that knee doesn't do a great deal. So I stopped playing. So not only have I, neglected, so to speak, my education, I've now got no identity, because the only thing that I was only ever good at is no longer there. But so I was quite lucky. I worked with my dad. My dad's got he had his own roofing business. I worked with him for a little bit, and I started going down to a gym. I was never a gym person in my footballing days. It was the last thing I wanted to do. I went down to a gym. It was more, you know, I had a spa and jacuzzi and that sort of thing. I was sort of 17, 18, so it was like my doorstep. And then I started training a little bit, and then I started hanging around with some powerlifters and started training a few old school. I mean, really old school powerlifters. You know, eat your 20 eggs a day, eat your, you know, 2 pounds of raw steak and blend it. If you can't eat it, chuck your tuna into a blender with Coca-Cola and drink it. If you can't eat it, it was like, you know, you got to get it down. So I was like, okay. So I started training. My weight back then as a 17, 18-year-old was probably about 11, 10 stone. By the time I was 21, I got to 16 and a bit stone. I was benching 160s, deadlifting. I think my deadlifting was 250s, 260 kilograms. And squat wasn't great. It was as low as I could go, but I loaded up with like 180, 200 kilograms sort of thing. I remember doing a 1,000-pound half deadlift, and just, you know, yeah. So I started training really heavily, started liking it, went to another gym. They asked me to compete, and then people were starting throwing steroids around, and I was like, I'm not doing that. So, but at that stage, I wanted to do some fitness. I did a personal training qualification, and then after that, really, I started the personal training course. I did level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. Got to my level 5 PT, and it's all posture. Everything was posture. It was pull check posture, and I think it was the first course in the country in the UK to bring the pull check sort of posture analysis and corrective exercise and that sort of thing in. And lucky enough, the guy who taught me is still a mate of mine now, and I just loved it. You know, the old plumb line up against the ceiling, drop it down, you know, go side, go front. And it was just, I loved it because I was allowed to have my own interpretation of what I was finding. It wasn't like, you know, the traditional, you know, 3 times 10 does this and 6 times 8 does that. And, you know, it's still, you know, we all do a bench press, elbows tucked in, and all that. You know, it's all sort of, that was all mechanical. That was all like everyone was repeating themselves. But when it started to look at the analysis, the posture, it was like, you know, asking questions. And that was what I was all about. You know, no one, you know, everybody gave me a question, but no one gave me the answer. So I had to find my own answers. So finding my own answers in posture analysis was brilliant. And I understood that literally as if it was like, you know, I understood everything about that course within space of a couple of days. So I started to like posture. So when I left that, I became a PT, personal trainer, and I did everything posture course. I did Pilates, you know, I didn't do yoga until I was later on because I couldn't physically get in some of the positions because my knees. So I was like, well, I'm not really. And back then yoga was very, because it's like mid 90s, you know, yoga was very sort of built up in that spirituality. You know, it's that sort of, you know, that sort of world. And that, at that stage, that wasn't me. You know, I was just an angry young kid who was just trying to, you know, make his way somewhere. So I did Alexander. I looked into IQ, I looked into Fly. So I think I looked into everything. Qualified as Alexander technique practitioner. Started doing some stuff of that. Started doing a lot of rehab, postural rehab stuff, and I just started to get into that a little bit more. And then I moved out of the area, did a lot of what's called gay grey stuff, pull check stuff. You know, I think I spent about 50 grand all in all, 50, 60 grand on vocational qualifications, and they were all postural based. And then I decided I came back to the area because the relationship broke up, and how shall I say this? I found a way to get into university, put it that way. Okay. But I only wanted to do biomechanics. I didn't want to do anything else. It was just biomechanics because I understood the practical aspects of biomechanics. You know, and by that stage I was doing diplomas in psychology and things like that. So I understood this whole holistic approach to movement. But I wanted to go to do biomechanics because biomechanics then it was like it's the ultimate of movement. You know, I knew postural stuff and I knew, you know, anatomy and stuff like that. I knew all that. I knew how to get some rehab, you know, bad knee pain by manipulating the big toe, all that sort of stuff. I knew how to do that. But biomechanics was like the word that was used in all of it. But if you was a biomechanist, you knew movement. It was like, you know, movement is all about, you know. So I wanted to do biomechanics. So I did my undergrad first, did my master's in biomechanics. Was on a first until the last module when my son was born. And then it was just a case of by that stage, it's like, just get it. And I think I missed the first by 1% or something, you know. But, you know, a dyslexic person, for me, to do a 2,000 piece word, it takes me 3 or 4 months. I think I did it in two or 3 days, just because it was like, there you go. So I became biomechanist, you know, so I had the theoretical aspects of biomechanics of movement to the practical aspects of movement. But I never ever, even during my masters, I never got ignited, if that's a word, with the pure science of biomechanics. You know, it was always a question of, oh, you know, science, I get that, but what if you do this, and what if you do that? And I think I did my masters was on a golf swing, and you know, I think I come up with like 20 different ways to manipulate that golf swing to get better data. You know what I mean? Just on the actual movement. So I never was like, you know, oh, you know, it's all about the maths, all about the maths, all about. I always went, well, that math's not right if I do that, and that math won't be right if I do this. And if I don't even use that math and use that math I just read about in a 1925 workbook, it always came back to, no, these are the rigid laws. This is the fixed system. You know, you use everything that is down in this sort of, this box of tricks, and you don't go elsewhere. You know, and everything that you regurgitate back scientifically, everything you write, academically, everything that I put down on paper to get published comes from those box of tricks. You know, and I was like, yeah, but if I do that, that box of tricks don't work. And if I do that, that box of tricks don't work. And if I do that, that box of tricks don't work. And that person's 3 inches shorter, that box of tricks don't work. And that, blah, blah, blah. And it just kept going on and on and on. And then I was asking questions to senior staff, and they were just like, well, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't, you can't do that. It doesn't fit the mold, because, again, we remember science has to fit certain criteria. If it doesn't fit criteria, then it becomes an outlier. And actually, all human beings are outliers. No one fits the criteria. And I was like, well, I know they're outliers because I've studied outliers for the last 20 years. You know what I mean? And I've studied, I rehab business of doing patients on posture. Every single person's an outlier.
Brilliant.
But at that stage I left. When I finished my masters, it was like, I want to do a PhD because I want to get to a point where I can start to say, biomechanics is SHIT in a way. And I was planning to do it on dynamic systems theory, which is it's understanding the human system as a chaotic environment. And I was like, that's pretty interesting. But at that moment, I think something happened. I think because obviously in university you need to have someone who is experienced within that field of research for you to carry that research out, and they haven't got no one. I think I got offered like kayaking or something like that, and I was like, I can't even swim, so there's no point in me do kayaking, and I'm not spending the next 5 years getting to a point where I can't study what I want to study. And I was like, well, that's not going to work. That moment, I got asked to go to. Well, around that time, I got asked to go to Belgium with the biointensity group with Steve Braybrook. It was around that sort of 4 or 5 month period, and at the same time, I was writing The Evolution of Biomechanics. So it was sort of like, I don't know how Steve Levin got hold of something. I really don't know to this day. But it was something that it may have been a podcast, or it may have been a webinar that I did based on when you saw me with in London. And then he contacted me and was like, can you tell me more? And we had this sort of conversation back and forward, and he introduced tensegrity, and I was like, yeah, but however, and it was like that. And we were trying to find this sort of mutual way to bring movement into tensegrity, really. Because what people don't understand, and I hope you guys that listen to this, who in the tensegrity world, lock, stock and barrel, you are talking complete and utter BS. Because if you speak to Steve all those years ago, he will tell you now that everything you're saying was so far away from his original plan, his original thought for it, it's laughable. Okay? So Steve Levin's original ideology about tensegrity is completely different to the BS you're hearing from so-called experts now about tensegrity. It's completely opposite, and it's hugely disrespectful that people are saying, this is tensegrity, and having Steve Levin's name at a small bit at the bottom, when actually all you've done is jumped on a bandwagon and made complete BS up to try to make yourself sound smart when you have no idea of what the man who is absolute genius in this field first thought about. And I can say that because I was one of the first people that actually spoke to Steve about biomechanics. And I can remember having a meeting with Steve in Belgium when I was sitting around a table with some hard-hitting people now who think they're the cleverest people about tensegrity. And he stood up and he pointed to me and said, you're the only person in this room that can take this to the next level, because you're the only person that can mix biomechanics and tensei together. All the others, complete and absolute. So please, when you listen to this, if you want to know about tensei Greek, don't even go to me. Go to Steve Levin and ask Steve Levin exactly what he wanted out of it, because he had a complete perfection of an idea, not the BS that you read about now, which is completely as fictional as most quantum physics and most conspiracy theories that you see about, you know, that you read about nowadays. And it's actually it goes further than that. It's about as real as Jack and Jill story. I'm going to tell my kids tonight. Okay, it's about as real as that Jack and Jill story. Okay, it's just complete and utter BS. So around that time, I was writing the book Evolution of Biomechanics, and it was just a case of just highlighting, you know, biomechanics says this, human movement is this. You pick a side. You know, I never went out to say it was bad, it was wrong. What I did at the end of it, and my wife had me write it as well, so I'm not taking this as a whole Steve Braybrook did it, because, you know, being someone with dyslexia, when you give someone 30, 40, 50, 60,000 words and say proofread it, it doesn't take a day, and then takes another 2 years to proofread it. But when you've got these sort of like thin caps at the end, you know, and it asks you questions, if those questions come back and go, oh, that makes no sense, then it makes no sense. You decide. So that book basically just highlighted some of the fallacies that biomechanics works on, that people are regurgitating as if that's how humans move and how humans are designed. And when you read it, people are going to take what they like out of it, but the thin caps are basically about questioning what you're reading or what so-called experts are speaking about. And I like that book, because I tell you God's honest truth now, I am the first person on this planet to speak about how the fallacy of biomechanics. I guarantee that now. There was a little dibble before me, a little dabble about, you know, the lever system, that dabbled a little bit for you people. But I guarantee you now, everything in that book was from my head. And from that moment, people have regurgitated my words as their own and have come across as all kinds of, you know, new movement experts. And all they've done is bought that book, read that book, regurgitated, and have never, ever, ever, ever said it come from me.
That's a shame, because, you know,
never, ever done that.
There needs to be respect for crediting other people's work, and we all know that. And
but the thing is, sorry, mate, but the thing is, you can't credit me, because I'm completely non-PC. You can't, you know, it's like crediting David Icke for stuff. You know, David Icke's a genius, an absolute genius. Some of the things he says might be a bit crazy. Some of the things he says are spot on. You can't quote David Icke, because then you'll sound like a quack. And all those followers that are following you won't believe you and won't like you, because you're following someone else who's a little bit different. That's why they don't quote me.
I quote you all the time, because, you know, you and I have that thing that we have. And, you know, Stephen and I meet up sometimes in coffee shops, either in Worthing or Brighton. And we've said this sometimes. If anyone else was sitting around listening to the conversations that we're having, they wouldn't know where to go with that, you know, because I think magic happens when you and I get together and we just start talking stuff. Things happen. But also, you've got a fantastic terminology here, biokinesis ontology. You know, what brought that word about for you? You know, what were you kind of scrabbling for to find that?
I think you just try to give yourself an identity, you
right.
know, and I think it was just, you know, biokinesis ontology is obviously just a play on words,
yeah,
you know, and I think, you know, I was coming up with sort of different ideas, and, you know, and again, it may have been, you know, it may have been a point where I want to be a bit egotistical. You know, it may have been a point where I'm saying, like, look at me, you know, and I'm the man, all that sort of stuff, you know. But I think it was just, you know, it gave it a different perspective. And I think that's the thing, you know. And I think, you know, everyone has their own quote on words, but you can't make a word up if you're still speaking about the same BS that you were before. You know, if you make a new word up because you said, oh, I've got a new idea, then it's got to be a completely new idea. And biokinesis ontology, you know, it was just a case of, well, I'm not saying biomechanics is purely crap, because if you're making an artificial limb or you're trying to track a golf ball in the air, then, you know, it is what it is. You know, I'm not saying tensei is completely crap. When you go back to what Steve Levin spoke about, what it is now is completely BS. You know, like I say, it's as fictional as, you know, it's about as real as Jack and Jill goes up the hill and gets a pot of water. You know, it's about as clinical as that. So there are, you know, so the pure essence of both of them are purely good, but then, you know, biokinesis ontology was then, you know, turn it into this, you know, this kinesis, this human, this motion, this, you know, this complete illogical, non-deterministic, chaotic non-linear, ever-changing, world that no one has an idea what is right and what is wrong. And there is no right idea. What's wrong is when people start going, yes, I found the Holy Grail. It's like, you found nothing. You've made the Holy Grail up. It's okay. Just tell people you made it up. If they want to follow you, then go for it. But don't start saying it's a Holy Grail and trying to get people, because, people are gullible, and people are looking for leaders and followers and people to change things. What this book was about purely was this book, if I'm totally honest, apart from obviously, my ideas, my ideologies, and me questioning biomechanics and spending years in that environment, writing things down and trying to put things together. Apart from that, the other thing that it was about, this book is psychology. This book is it's a psychology book, because this book is purely about, do not believe the BS that you read or you hear from people who are touting themselves as being the best of the best. This book was written in a way that hopefully it allowed people to then have their own views and expressions based on their own views and expressions without being told that what they're saying is completely wrong. This book was a psychological book that I hope that allows people to have their own voice without being told and persecuted, if that's the word, I can't pronounce the word, in a way that makes them feel less respected in the environment that they're in. And the movement world, I guarantee, and I've said it from day one, is full of people on big chairs who are stroking their own ego, and people underneath it that will not say you're wrong. This book was about all those people that really go, yes, they are wrong, and I'm going to question. And since that book come out, the whole world of biomechanics is not the way it should be and all that, people started spouting that as if it was like from their own voices. I heard some people that I respect who started quoting from my book, and I remember sitting there going, "What the?" I've emailed you, I've sent you things, and I've gone, "What the hell?" It's like, and I've known people that have made courses on the back of that book.
You've got your own.
And that's the movement world. That's the movement world.
From that, you talk about psychology. Something that really is amazing as well is that, as you've started to evolve from the work you're doing as well, because you're kind of evolving it beautifully. And the stuff you started introducing into my courses and the stuff that I see that I think you're doing now with football teams and various others is such a different neurological approach, and I think it's quite remarkable in the way that you get to understand that and you see that very quickly in people. So where are you at now with it? What is it that you're doing now? Because it's, I've seen it and experienced it and only see elements of it, but the ramifications of it are enormous.
Yeah, like, the position I'm in now is I'm doing my doctorate in education, because, I think ultimately, we had this conversation before, I think, my legacy somewhere would be back in the environments that are facilitating change in those people that were like me. We said that before, I love the movement world to death, but my own personal legacy would be to look at, how can we, as in an educational perspective, when I'm surrounded by people, 'cause I teach every day of the week, university standard level, undergraduate courses, how do I get those individuals achieving results or achieving a life in education, if they want to challenge that, where once upon a time they got told they couldn't. For example, I teach where I teach. I'm probably 90% of people that come to my courses, and I work in education, I work in university or undergrad courses. Most people that come onto my undergrad courses, 90% of those have been told that they are the worst students you can find, that they've got no real education, they shouldn't be in education, they never get a university degree, they're the worst kind of students you ever had. Okay. I want them all. Because then I'm in a perfect environment, and I do it every single year, and I've got 14 passing this year who will go on to do a further year elsewhere, another course, top end undergrad masters, who are walking in there in the top 25% of the country, because they're an adult version, they're 17, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, but they are like I was when I was 10, 11, 12, 13. They're coming with big chips on their shoulder, no one likes them, everything that they've done good at, people said they're bad at. And everything they can't do, people just hit them over the head, and that's the reasons why you're not going to have a life that you want. and these guys are passing and qualifying with first degrees. That's my legacy. And that's just an extension of the movement world, you know, and that's why I probably am hard hitting, you know, and I think one of the things, and that's why I've got into the education and my doctorate is to find ways. Now, one of my doctorate work at the moment is looking at, you know, adding class and movement break into all kinds of education. So getting up every 50 minutes to do some exercise, you know, and how neurologically that improves not only your physical well-being, but your mental and your academic and your, you know, your ability for cognitive functioning, you know. So I'm working on that as a scientist, but, you know, I'm bringing that hopefully into all kinds of education. I do it in my education. You know, I'm working on things like, you know, we never teach, we facilitate, we give someone the space to be creative. That's all we do. We don't do anything else. We don't tell someone how to do it. We find space and you know, self-organized learning. I'll give you the platform, I'll give you a question, go and find the answer. Is there a right answer? No, there's your answer. That's the right answer. That's it. That's done. And especially movement, you know, you find the answer for your body because you're doing a different way from I do. As long as it fits you and it works, you're not in pain, then you found the answer. I don't give it, and I don't really care how you find the answer. I don't care. I'll just set the question and give you a space. Off you go and find. And education the same. I'll give you the question. I'll give you all the modalities to go and search for it. You come back with an answer, and probably when you come back with an answer and you present it, it's a better answer than I had in the first place. And I would go perfect. Yeah. No, that's wrong because it's not the way that I learned or the way that this textbook says right or wrong.
And that is where I think you and I really do, you know, with that sort of meeting point for the two of us is where, you know, we know that the individual is that individual and they've got it's like, you know, the shape of their internal structure, let's put it that way, is its own personal coding for motion, their own way, and they can only find it like that. You know, and what we're doing is facilitating the environment for them to find it for themselves. So they've got the confidence and they can depend upon it and rely upon it without anyone else trying to put that square peg in the round hole and making their head. You know, they find it for themselves. Once they've got that, that's what makes them unique. And this is, it's a dodgy area, but this whole thing about gait analysis is everyone starts walking the same. You know, you've got people, it's like, you know this with football. And we watched this, you know, Sharon, my wife, as you know, is from Brazil. And when we watched the last World Cup, it was so sad to watch what happened to Brazil. Because all of the Brazilian players are playing European football. They're not playing Brazilian football anymore. So that unique quality that they have as their beauty and the way they play in their environment in Brazil, they don't do anymore. They play it the European way. So that magic that team used to have is gone. Yeah. When I've been out in Brazil and watching the kids play, they play on uneven ground. So the only thing they can do is keep the ball in the air. That's where the magic was. But now they play just a game on the floor. You know, and what the uniqueness of each individual has almost been rubbed out and just turned into a machine.
Yeah, but I think the thing is, I think one of the things that I do extremely well, people say, not that it takes any skill at all. Well, the only skill it takes is to not really care in the situation that you're in, and, you know, speaking your truth. One of the things that I always say is, I say every single day, the reason people don't get better, let's say, or improve or get to a point in their life where they're happy both in movement or psychology or anything like that, is the fact of most people live a complete lie to themselves. They're trying to fit other people's rules and regulations. They're trying to fit into a society where they get rewarded with things that they don't need, and that gives them a self-identity. People have lost their true identity, and people are too scared to say things, act in certain ways because it doesn't fit the social norm. It won't give them the job they want, that they think that they need, or it won't give them relationships that they think they need, that they don't need. So when you start living up people's rules and laws and regulations, you end up being a sheep. But what people don't realise is, you know, for 23 hours a day, when you're banging everybody else to try to fit in, when you go home to that privacy of that 1 hour at night, your mind's crazy. Your mind's saying to you, "What the hell are you doing? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing why are you doing these extra 5 hours for no money? Why are you helping this person out when they're not going to help you back? Why are you doing these things?" That's forcing you away from your natural identity. One thing I'm good at, if I see someone who's telling a bit of a BS about themselves, I go, "You're lying." Don't, you know, don't deny it. If you want to lie, just say you're lying. That's cool. But don't try to, you know, what is it? Don't bullshit. Don't kid a kidder. Don't bullshit a bullshitter. You know, and I'm good at calling people out. I'm good at calling people out. And some like it, some don't. But every single person, when you call them out, they always end up and go, yeah, you're right. And I go, well, it's not about whether I'm right or wrong. I'm just trying to say that a lot of your problems you're dealing with is because you lost your identity. If you get your identity back of who you really are, whether that is a shout or a scream, or you want to wear pink hair, or Doc Martin boots, or shave your head, or you know you haven't told people about your sexual orientation, or you know you want to, I don't know, you want to jump off a cliff and, you know, paraglide. I don't care what it is. Just do it. Or if you can't do it, just say that's who you are. Because if you do that, most of your issues that you got, both movement and psychologically, will become a lot easier. Because if your whole
it's quite liberating when that happens.
And I'm not afraid, but that's not because I'm careless or I haven't got much empathy. It's just the fact of, if I don't say that at that moment, I'm not true to myself. I'm losing my identity. Because if I start going, oh, well, it doesn't matter and you're good, then I'm like, I will come and go, well, I'm doing what you're doing. I can't do that.
Yeah, there is a thing with this, is that, you know, when that person starts to realize who they are, and, you know, that can be quite unnerving when that moment happens. But what you see is that their self-expression comes through and their movements change. Their behavioral movements change, the way they adapt into situations. I mean, you've done this with the guys in the groups where you've taken them to a place and they've had a glimmer of who they are, and then you've had them move again, and oh my God, it's so different. It's, you know, that limitation, that injury point that they might have had that they've hung on to, that then became their identity because they'd lost who they are. Once that's gone, that movement is so free. And it's astoundingly shocking to them. And either they then have a choice to either go back to that place or continue down the route that they don't know so well. And that route they don't know so well, once they're brave enough, if that's the right word, to go down that route, it's extremely rewarding and it's exciting, you know, every day.
I think, you know, people need to understand that, you know, movement is an extension of your creativity. It's as simple as that, you know. So if people have a lack of, you know, there is no such thing as a lack of movement. It's all relative to the individual. But if someone's trying to do something different to their movement that they don't normally have, it's because they're not creative in that act, you know. And when they do it, it's a change. And when it's a change, and they become a different person, and they, you know, and if they're going into it thinking, you know, or they're going to have a certain personality or certain identity around it, and that new movement is something completely different to them, you know, they're going to question, can they bring this old identity into that? Well, actually, that moment, it was a completely new identity. Yeah. And, you know, I say all the time, you know, the average person must wear about 10 different masks a day. They wear a mask as a mum, they wear masks as a dad or a brother or a sister, or the businessman, or the clocking in worker, or the yoga instructor, or, you know, the lover, the fighter. Well, they wear different masks. The more masks you wear, the more you're bullshitting yourself. The ones that have have the less, you know, have the best movements, the ones that are just them. I am this in a business meeting. I am this in my relationship. I am this in the movement field. That's just me, because there's no caging then. You're not going into it going, how do I need to fit into this situation? Do I need to do this? So if you're doing that, we all know, if you go into a situation preempting, which you do subconsciously, preempting how you're going to mimic your place in that, then your posture just follows. So you've already planned your posture. Oh, I'm going to be submissive because he's a dominant person. I'm going to be submissive today. Do you really think you're going to have your chest out, you know, head up? No, you're going to be in a very defeated posture with very defeated words. And all of a sudden your brain starts to realize your hierarchy, or you know, I can do this in that environment. I can't do that. You're already telling yourself what you can do and how you can do, but you're being controlled by other people. But actually, the worst thing is you're not even being controlled by other people, because they're being controlled by more other people, and everyone's trying to control each other, and you're just being controlled by your perception of what other people, you think other people controlling you by in the first place. It's a complete and utter BS. And you, and that's just human nature. That's just human nature. You get into all kinds, all kinds of environment, from education to movement to whatever it's going to be. But the ones that go in there and go, give me some space, I'll find a way. There you go. Well done. Off you go. I see you in 2 weeks' time, because you'll find a way. But you'll find a way that's never been done to anybody else in whoever done it before. But you won't question it. You won't argue about it. You won't judge against someone else. You won't, start to sort of, find laws if it's right or wrong. You'll just do it. And if it works, go with it. Thank you very much. You've done your job. You're the best women expert in the world.
And I think there is probably where we wrap it up. That's brilliant, because that's such a great endpoint there. So I'm going to say thank you, Stephen, for that. Where can people contact you? So what's your details if they need to find you?
Yeah, if you want to find me, the best thing to do is just email me. I've always said, if you want me, you can find me. If you don't, then you won't. So Braybrook Stephen, BRAYBROK, Stephen with PH @gmail.com. You can go to you go to Facebook, Stephen Braybrook. You can go to Twitter. I think Twitter's under Braymove. Just send me an email. Go to that. Nothing's a secret.
No, nothing's a secret. And also, you have your own series of podcasts that you've been running. You interviewed me on one of those originally.
I've done a lot. I've probably got about 30 or so podcasts out. The Musings with the Movement Man. So Musings with the Movement Man. The recent ones on Spotify at the moment. The recent ones are around coaching and things like that, leadership, because that's the moment I'm in at the moment. But the previous ones that you did and the ones that we'll be doing, when I revisit this in a few weeks, they're going to be transported onto. But if you just go to themovementman.com, www.themovementman.com, you'll find the link. So there's some on Spotify now and some on an old platform. So yeah, a lot of stuff out there. Google my name. There's some good stuff. There's some bad stuff. There's some happy stuff. There's some sad stuff. There's live stuff. There's reality.
What we'll do, Stephen, is we'll bring you back for another chat as well, so we can start to drill down into particular subjects, and that's really
absolutely.
Thank you ever so much, Stephen. It's been this is mind-blowing and brilliant. Thank you.